Mr. Bitterman, you make me smile every time you come in the courtroom when you take your hat off. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Good morning, members of the jury. Again, the attorneys and I had some items that we needed to take up. I wasn't sure how long they were going to take. My hope had been that we weren't going to delay you this morning. We did take a little bit of your time, and I apologize. But we are at this point ready to resume the state's case. Mr. Maybanks or Mr. Harris, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state recalls Matt Denlinger.
If you'd please pause and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated. I do re-administer the oath, but you know the expectations in the courtroom. So
I do,
please,
thank you.
Please tell us your full name again and spell your first and last names.
Matthew Denlinger, Matthew. Denlinger is Denlinger.
Thank you. You may begin your examination of the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Matt, yesterday there was some testimony received regarding State's Exhibit Number 8, which now has been received into evidence. I'm going to hand this to you and ask, is that, again, is that a document that you compiled, that you and Detective Larison described yesterday?
Yes, it is.
Permission to publish State's 8, Your Honor?
You may.
While that's happening, Matt, does this contain the names of individuals in this investigation that were ruled out as suspects because their DNA was compared to the suspect male DNA profile, resulting in them being eliminated as a contributor?
Yes.
And as it's now displayed in the TV above you there, did you indicate by highlighting the name of Mr. Burns in this document?
I did.
And what does that signify?
That's the one name on the list that we were not able to eliminate.
And we heard that testimony yesterday. Through the course of the investigation, then, did you and Detective Larison collect DNA from some individuals that were known to Michelle back in 1979 and had been friends with her?
We did. We collected DNA from as many of her friends as we could come up with, including ex-boyfriends and the people that were, had contact with her that night: Andy Seidel, Merlin Winkler, Todd Bergen, Tracy Price, Kurt Thomas, Bergen. We collected from all of them.
For example, here above you, we've gone to the page here where Charles Seidel, is that Andy's first name, Charles?
Yes, it is.
And can you indicate then for us how where his DNA was checked and eliminated?
Right here, Charles Seidel. It's checked in that box, and at the top, it's listed as being eliminated under the watch of Doug Larison.
Okay. And same for, we can get to it, Mike Wyrick.
Correct. Mike Wyrick, right there, also done under the supervision of Doug Larison.
And then at the top of the same page here, do you see where Kurt Thomas is referenced?
Yes, I do.
And again, was that eliminated under the watch of Detective Larison?
Correct.
And then I believe Mr. White, who we heard from in this case too, he's there? Is that right?
Yes, Jeff White, right here.
And you mentioned some other individuals, Mr. Price, Mr. Bergen, and Mr. Miller. Are they also on this list?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and take this down then for now. As part of this investigation, Matt, did you locate some photographs of the defendant from the approximate time period of this case?
Yes, I did.
May I approach you, witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Been handing the witness what's been marked as State's Exhibits 13A, 13B, and 13C. Have you seen these exhibits before?
Yes, I have.
And are those the photographs that you were able to obtain in your investigation of the defendant, Jerry Burns, at various approximate times around this, the time period of this homicide?
Yes.
Your Honor, pursuant to a stipulation between the parties, the state hereby moves to admit States 13A through 13C.
Is that a correct statement of the
It
stipulation?
is, Your Honor, yes. We've agreed to the admission of these exhibits and therefore have no objection.
Okay. States Exhibits 13A, B, and C will be received and made part of the record.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
You may.
In what's shown as State's Exhibit 13A, Matt, is this, to your knowledge, a picture of Mr. Burns' wedding photograph from approximately April of 1975?
Yes, it is.
And then we'll go to 13B. And based upon your investigation into this case, is 13B a picture from approximately December of 1980?
Yes, it is.
And from your understanding, then, the gentleman in the middle, the older gentleman, is that Mr. Burns?
Yes.
If we could go to 13C now. And is it your understanding from the investigation that this photograph, also of Mr. Burns, is from approximately the summer of 1979?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and take those down. We heard some testimony yesterday that the known buccal swabs of Ken and Don Burns were also sent to the DCI lab where profiles were developed and compared to the suspect male DNA profile from F5, resulting in both Ken and Don Burns being eliminated as contributors in reference to State's Exhibits 11D, 11D1, and 11D4. Were you involved in the collection of those buccal swabs?
Yes, I collected both of those myself.
And do you remember what day you collected those buccal swabs?
January 31st, 2019.
Just to make sure we cover, can you tell us about how you collected the buccal swabs of Ken Burns first, just the procedure involved?
We drove to Manchester and we met with him. I used the same procedure that I always use. I put on rubber gloves. We used the sealed swabs and an envelope, and I collected them by taking the Q-tip. I rub it on the inside of both cheeks. You're just doing both just to make sure you get enough DNA. And then we put them back in the envelope, we seal it up, and eventually turn them into the lab.
And when did you collect the DNA of Don Burns?
The same day. We drove right from Manchester to Davenport. We met with him and did the same procedure.
And were both Don and Ken Burns' DNA then properly secured and delivered to the police department where, as we heard yesterday, Investigator Kruger delivered them to the lab for further analysis?
Yes.
I want to take you to the day of December 19th, 2018. And my first question for you is, what was the significance of that day?
That's the 39th anniversary of Michelle's death.
Did you and the investigative team at the Cedar Rapids Police Department decide to develop a plan for December 19th, 2018 in terms of approaching Mr. Burns?
Yes.
And was that date chosen after you had received the results of the testing done on the straw that was taken from Mr. Burns, as we heard yesterday, that found that he could not be eliminated as a contributor to crime scene F5?
Correct.
What preparations were made to conduct the interview that day?
Well, we just made plans at the police department. I think there was about 18 of us that were going to go to Manchester that day. But specifically, myself and J.D. Smith were going to conduct an interview. It had been 39 years, so we weren't really sure how someone was going to react.
Okay,
Just
that was
wanted-
that was
just
going
wanted
to
to
be
be
my next
mindful.
question. I'm sorry, we're talking at the same time. Go ahead.
We just wanted to be prepared.
All right. And so the purpose of having multiple officers involved is essentially you didn't know what was going to happen, so you wanted to be prepared for any possible scenario?
Correct.
Despite the number of officers involved, was it the plan to arrest him when you talked to him that day?
No, the plan was to interview him. We had no fixed intention to arrest him.
You mentioned, I believe earlier, but who were you partnered with that day?
J.D. Smith?
And is he the older gentleman who retired from the DCI who had been helping you with this case?
Yes.
Did you indeed conduct an interview of Mr. Burns on December 19th of 2018?
Yes, we did.
And where did you conduct that interview?
We conducted at his business, which is at 1608 230th Street in Manchester, Iowa.
Approximately what time did you conduct that interview?
We started shortly before noon. I think it was about 11:45 a.m.
Was that interview recorded?
Yes, it was.
And not to give away too many secrets here, but can you tell us how that interview was recorded?
We took a covert camera, so it's a little hidden camera that also has audio, so that it would record the video and the audio of it so that we could refer to it later. And then I also had what we call a transmitter, an audio transmitter, with us so that the other units that weren't in the interview could listen to the interview in case they needed to help us or just for information.
So you brought the covert camera to record video and audio directly of Mr. Burns?
Correct.
And there was also a live feed of sorts set up so others could listen?
Yeah, they could listen. They couldn't see the video, though.
When you arrived at Mr. Burns' place of business on December 19th of 2018 at approximately 11:45 a.m., were you in uniform?
No, I was wearing some dress pants and a button-up shirt. Had my jacket on. It was chilly out, and that's what I normally wear to work.
And so did you have a Cedar Rapids Police Department badge visible when you talked to him?
No, I left my coat on the whole time.
Any guns showing or sidearms or anything like that?
No.
Is that pretty standard procedure then for a soft interview approach or just to go talk to somebody about
Yes.
information?
Correct.
Tell us what happened when you walked inside Mr. Burns' business to speak to him.
It's a business. They have customers, so the side door that I think the customers probably use, that's the door we went into. It was standing open. So I went in and I didn't know where anyone was at, so I said hello a couple times, and then I heard Mr. Burns from his office say, "Come on in."
Where was that office inside the establishment?
Right inside the door is a short hallway, and to the right is his office.
Did you enter that office area, make contact with Mr. Burns?
We did.
What did you do once you made contact with him?
We introduced ourselves. I told him we were at the cold case unit. I gave him a business card. Asked him if it'd be all right if we sat and talked to him.
And where did you sit when you spoke with Mr. Burns?
We just sat on the other side of the desk. I assume that's where he has customers sit when they come in to talk to him about business and stuff.
How did you introduce yourself to Mr. Burns?
Well, verbally, I introduced myself, but I gave him a business card.
Did you tell him at the time, if you recall, what unit you were working with?
I did. I told him we were with the cold case unit.
And as you began to speak with Mr. Burns, did you tell him what case you were working on?
I did. I told him we were working on the Michelle Martinko homicide case.
Did the defendant indicate that he'd heard about that case?
He did. He said he'd heard about it back in the day.
Did you tell him why you were there to speak to him?
I did. I told him his name came up.
And what was his response to that, if anything?
He said, strange.
And what kind of reaction, if any, did you observe when you mentioned Michelle Martinko's name?
Not much. No really visible reaction from him at all.
We talked about the fact that this interview was recorded, right?
It was, yes.
May I approach a witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Be handing the witness what's been marked as State's Exhibit 14A, and I'll ask you, Investigator Denlinger, if you have, or can tell us whether State's Exhibit 14A contains the contents of that interview with Mr. Burns.
It does.
And is this recording that was made with the covert device containing the video and audio that you had with you when you spoke to Mr. Burns on December 19th, 2018?
Yes, it does.
Does that contain a fair and accurate report?
Yes, it does.
Move to admit 14A, Your Honor.
Mr. Spees, have you had an opportunity to review 14A?
I have and we have, and no objection.
The court will receive and make part of the record State's Exhibit 14A.
1 second. Yeah, get some. Your Honor, may I approach the witness again?
You may.
Beginning of witness what's been marked as 14C, 14B as in dog, and 14E. I'll ask you, Matt, do you recognize those exhibits?
Yes, I do.
What are those?
These are the images that were created by Parabon during our investigation.
Did you use these photographs during your interview with Mr. Burns?
I did. I brought all 3 of these with me. I printed off color copies and showed them to him.
And when you, well, you described these as the images created by Parabon. Is that in reference to your testimony yesterday regarding the snapshot phenotyping that was done that developed a composite image of prospectively what our suspect DNA individual would have looked like at a certain age?
Yes, correct. This is their logo down here that says snapshot phenotyping underneath it. But yes, these are the images they created.
And these are the ones you used to show Mr. Burns or to discuss with Mr. Burns,
Yes,
as is depicted on the video?
correct.
Move to amend States 14C, B, and E.
Mr. Spees, have you had an opportunity to review those proposed exhibits?
I have and we have, and no objection.
The court will receive State's Exhibits 14C as in cat, D as in dog, and E as in elephant. They will be made part of today's record.
We're going to publish those in a second here. Matt, during the interview with Mr. Burns, based upon your observations of him, did he show any emotion about the questions being asked or in providing any answers to those questions?
No,
And did that continue up to the point where he was ultimately arrested?
yeah, even after being arrested, he showed almost no emotion or reaction to anything.
First, can we publish the pictures to the jury, Your Honor?
You may.
And we're showing, first, I believe, State's Exhibit 14C. And Matt, is this one of the photographs that you brought with you to talked with Mr. Burns?
Yes, it is.
And according to your testimony yesterday, you explained this was developed by Parabon as a potential snapshot of the individual whose DNA was found at the crime scene that they developed. At what approximate age is this intended to depict based upon what Parabon told you?
This one's the standard one, and they give you the standard one at age 25.
And let's go to 14D, as in dog. And appears to be a similar photograph, but with a different hairstyle. Can you explain what's behind that, or?
This particular one is artist age progressed to age 50.
And let's show 14E. And what is this intended to depict?
And this one is also at age 25, but it's intended to have an alternate hairstyle, something that I asked them if they had anything that they thought was more reminiscent of the 70s, and this is what they provided.
Okay, thanks. We'll take those down now. And Your Honor, permission to publish and play State's Exhibit 14A, the interview.
You may.
Thank you.
And counsel, I would just remind you, as the video and audio plays, please remain quiet. I'm not going to ask Ms. Thomason to take down the testimony that will come in or the sound that will come in through that exhibit.
Hello? Hello? Hey, how are you today? Jerry, my name's Matt. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, I'm with the Cedar Rapids Police Department.
Oh, yeah.
This is JD.
Hi. Hi.
He's with me. Hey, can we chat with you for a second about
Sure.
a case we're working on?
Sure.
You got a cat here, huh?
Yep.
What's the kitty's name?
Bella.
Bella. Oh, she's nice. Is she a farm cat?
Yep.
Can I pull up this other chair with that?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, don't drink my coffee, JD. We work in the cold case unit down at the Cedar Rapids Police Department, and we're following up on an old case. I don't know if you've heard it in the news at all. It's a homicide that happened at Westdale Mall. Michelle Martinko, is that something you've ever heard of?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you see it in the paper or anything like that?
No.
How-
Long time ago.
Long time ago. I got a business card, by the way. I should probably give you one here. Well, what we've been doing lately, and gotta find my pin here. What we've been doing lately is we've been following up on leads. And we had an article run in the paper the other day, and so we just got a bunch of new leads and stuff like that, people calling in, giving us tips and whatnot. And so we've been stopping by and just chatting with people and trying to kind of determine, you know, which leads are good and which leads are not and stuff like that. Well, long story short, your name came up.
Strange.
Yeah. Well, it's not that uncommon. I mean, people call in all the time. We had a picture made from our suspect's DNA, and then so what people do is they often think that you know, certain people maybe look like the image and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we come about that. Did you ever see those pictures we had? I got a copy of one here. So they're like those kind of things there.
That's not it, though.
Well, that's the picture we had created.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then there's a couple other ones, like younger ones and things like that.
Wow.
It's kind of
Boy, it looks a lot different than I look in the mirror, but
What's that?
it looks a lot different than I look in the mirror, but
Oh, I don't totally disagree with you. Be all right if we just asked you a few questions about it. So this happened in December of 1979, and you said earlier that you kind of heard about it. What do you remember hearing about it?
just it was a big deal.
A big deal. I mean, do you remember what happened?
Not exactly.
Like, do you remember who the victim was, anything like that?
Not really, but
Had you
no,
ever?
I just seen something about Jody Husentroot recently. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a similar kind of thing or whatever with the girl. But had you ever heard of Michelle Martinko before that
No.
this case came out? Had you ever seen her picture in the paper or anything like that?
A long time ago.
This is a picture of Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Is that anyone you ever remember seeing or anything like that?
No.
Is not that's not a name you knew or anything like
No.
that. Okay. Are you from here originally?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you give me your first name again?
Jerry.
Jerry. That's right. And what's your middle name, Jerry?
Lynn.
And Burns, right?
Yeah. Boy, that's strange, those pictures.
I know.
Do I look like that?
Well, I kind of think you do a little bit. Enough that we bothered to come up here and talk. Now, some people call in and we find like driver's license photos or old yearbook photos and stuff and kind of compare them, and then we sort of make some sort of educated guess on whether or not we think it's worth our time. And a lot of times we just err on the side of caution and we just, let's just go chat with them. What are we out? We get a day on the road to go chat with someone. No big deal. What's your date of birth, Jerry?
12/23/53.
So, do you have a phone number? Sorry.
319-360-8190.
And where'd you go to high school?
West Delaware.
Did you go to college at all?
No. Cat's friendly.
That's all right. I got a cat at home myself. Have you always lived in Manchester?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever live in Cedar Rapids?
No.
So, I know it's a long time ago. Can you think back? Do you remember ever working in Cedar Rapids?
No.
You never worked in Cedar Rapids? What did you do for a living in 1979?
I was a salesman, worked in Elkader.
What did you sell? Do you remember?
John Deere.
Like, kind of like what you got out in a lot? Those, like, mowers
Well-
and stuff, or big tractors?
Combines, tractors, everything.
Oh, sure. So in '79, did you ever have reason to be in Cedar Rapids or anything like that?
Not really. So,
Did you go to Westdale Mall?
oh yeah, we've gone to West Del Mall.
Sure. How about what kind of car did you have back then? Do you remember?
1979. '74 Chevy Malibu.
Do you remember what color it was or anything?
Brown
Brown.
with a white top.
So in
Those are the only pictures you had? Those three?
yeah,
Oh.
I mean that's that they just so they make one picture. The I'll show it to you again here. So what they do is they take your bad guy's DNA and then they make this young picture. So this is the bad guy at 25, or it's kind of an estimation. Yeah.
It's interesting.
And then the picture with the longer hair is the same image, only It is with like shaggy hair. We had him put like a kind of a 70s hairstyle on it. Now, I didn't know you in 1979. How old were you? If you can do the math real quick.
26?
So you know,
No. 27? 26, somewhere.
you know better than we would if you look like that in 79.
Well, I don't think I ever looked like that. I was a good looking guy if I did.
Right, right. Well, you probably were. So, you never worked out at Westdale or anything like
No.
that? Never did any jobs there?
No.
You never remember seeing her, you don't know her, you weren't there? I'm trying to think. So, the mall just opened in October, like October 12th or something along that line. So, it'd been open for like two and a half months, right? And so what they did is, so she was murdered out in the parking lot there, and so they followed up on it for almost 40 years now. And so they've been just following up on people, and then more recently we had some of the evidence processed and we found some DNA. And so from that we've kind of been reaching out to all these people that are in the reports and just kind of comparing them to see if we can find a match. And just so far we just have not found anyone in those reports that we matched with. So that's when we had the picture made, hoping to get more people to call in. And so people have been calling in. We've taken probably 100, 125, 130 more phone calls of people, and we're knocking on doors.
So, when you were at Westdale, when you would have gone out there for just
I don't know, Christmas shopping or, different times over the years.
Christmas?
Sure. Did you ever go
Those
there?
kind-
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
Go
ahead. Did you ever go there by yourself, without your family?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
With that picture, do you have any brothers that look like you, or
Yeah.
that look closer than that?
Well, I don't ever remember them looking like that either.
Okay. You have some brothers that, how many do you have?
Two.
Two? They live here too?
One does, and one's in Davenport.
Okay.
But back in 70, you said 79?
Yep.
One brother was probably either lived in Ottawa or in Minnesota.
Okay. And the other one here?
Yeah.
Okay. They don't look any more like that then?
No.
Okay. Were you married back then?
Yeah.
Do you remember hearing, one thing we like to ask people is, do you ever remember hearing rumors or stories about what happened to her?
Not really.
Or who might have done it or anything like that? I know you're a little further away from the case than some of the people that knew her specifically, but you don't ever remember hearing any rumors or how she died? You ever
Not
remember
really.
hearing how she died? So we're gonna collect it today and send it to the lab. There's your copy of the search warrant.
Never seen one of these before.
Yeah, it's. Well, I only need this one, since we're not doing the other.
Okay.
So I got some gloves here. All it is a little Q-tip. I just collect it from inside the mouth. It's not,
This takes a few days
Yeah, just collect.
at the lab, and we'll
Okay.
And I just need to collect a little from the other side.
We'll contact you afterwards, let you know
Okay.
the results. And
Okay.
I'm just thinking, gosh, I'm just spitballing here, but, hold on, it's probably my wife here. Yep, that's my wife. I'm just thinking, you know, we kind of know going in that this is probably going to be a match.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why would that be?
Well, we were kind of hoping you'd tell us. The reality is, oh my gosh, what does she need? The reality is we're not here on a whim. We're here to confirm what we already know. I already collected some DNA from you that you got rid of before. And so I'm telling you, Jerry, I already know that your DNA is going to match the DNA that we have on file.
Just what the heck would I got rid of?
Well, people get rid of stuff all the time. Just throw it away. But I think that's kind of irrelevant to what we're talking about here. Jerry, so the reality is we have your DNA at the crime scene. And so we know you were there that night this happened. But what we don't know, Jerry, is why it happened. There's a lot of reasons things happen in life, and there might be an explanation for this that would help us better understand what happened, that would not make this, you know, a terrible thing for you. But I don't know what that explanation would be if I don't hear it from you.
Well, I don't know.
How would we get your DNA at the crime scene there, Jerry?
I don't know. Test it, see if it is.
No, we did. How would it be there, Jerry?
I don't know.
What happened that night?
Wait for the test to come back.
Jerry,
I don't think it did.
it did.
I don't think so.
Okay. Jerry, what happened that night?
I don't know. Test it and see what happens.
Yeah, we're going to test this.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead and test it.
We are. But what I'm telling you is I'd already collected some DNA from stuff you discarded, and it matched our sample from the crime scene, Jerry. Let's just, can we back up for a second? Would that be all right? And can I ask you a little bit about the crime itself, and we can just forget about the straw for a minute?
Okay.
Okay. And like I said, if you got to get back to work, let me know. The crime scene's pretty limited, okay? It's not, you know, like all over the town. It's just in one little spot out of Westdale Mall in her car. Is it possible that you're out at Westdale Mall and you run into some girl that you feel like talking to, or maybe you knew casually, and that you were just having a conversation with her? That's not possible. If at any point is it possible that you ran into her and said hi to her by the, you know? No, that's not possible.
No.
There's no conceivable way you would have ever just, you know, sat down next to her at the Orange Julius
No.
and said hi.
No.
Okay, because that kind of thing has never happened before, or what?
Not really.
Okay. Hey, you ever accidentally get in the wrong car out at Westdale Mall?
No.
Okay. You ever accidentally, you know, run into a young girl out there and
No.
say hi to her or anything like that?
No.
You ever say hi to any young girls out there that weren't your wife?
No.
Okay. I mean, I understand your concerns about putting yourself there, but I mean, the reality is, though, we kind of know you were there. And we're past kind of know. We know you were there, but the why part is what we're not positive on.
No, we better prove I was there first.
Well, I don't think that's a problem.
Okay.
Okay. I think dropping anyone off.
No.
Do you ever bank there?
No.
Did you ever shop at JCPenney's there?
Not unless we were Christmas shopping
Right. And all
or
the,
shopping.
all the shopping you ever did there was with your wife? Or
Yeah.
your family or something? Excuse me. Go to a movie?
No.
Never went to a movie out there?
Well,
There
we
was a-
did, but with the family.
Right. Ever have any mental episodes in your life or anything like that where you can't remember?
I don't know.
You don't know if you've ever had any?
Right.
Have you ever taken
Well-
any medication for that kind of stuff?
No, not exactly. I might have no. Can't think of the word where you hit your head.
Concussion?
Concussion.
Concussion?
Yeah,
Playing sports or working or what?
working.
Oh, sure. You ever seriously injured yourself other than that?
Not really.
And when was the concussion?
No, several.
Before?
Nothing I mean, I've never went to the doctor for one, but I've been knocked out, so
You remember when that would have been?
probably 3 or 4 different times.
Okay.
Falling, banging my head, and that kind of stuff.
Were you an adult or?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever go to Cedar Rapids, like go out to the bars there, go visit your buddies?
Not really. I didn't really have any friends that drank much. So.
Okay. So when you say not really, did you ever go to any of the bars in Cedar Rapids?
Not that I can think of.
Or at that time in your life at least? No, not at all.
Not really a bar person.
Did you ever have any substance abuse problems yourself?
No.
Okay. No drugs, no alcoholism or
No.
anything like that?
Well, I drank a fair amount when I was younger, but
Sure. Do you think that may have contributed to what happened that night?
I don't think anything happened that night.
Do you remember hearing about it in 1979?
Oh yeah, it was a big story.
Right. What do you remember, or do you remember where you were when you first heard about it?
Not really. It's just on the news.
Just on the news? And you don't know how she died, right?
Not specifically.
What do you think happened to her?
I don't know if she was attacked or whatever.
Yeah, that's accurate. Do you know where?
Not at Westdale Mall, yeah.
It's just stuff you've heard in the news?
Mhm.
Nothing firsthand?
Right.
Any reason anyone would have written down your plate, your license plate, that particular
Not if I
night?
wasn't there.
Yeah, well, I think we've already established that you were there.
I don't think so.
We just haven't. Do you know what today is?
19th of December.
Did you murder someone that night, Jerry?
Test the DNA.
Jerry,
Test the DNA.
why did this happen, Jerry?
Test the DNA.
What happened?
I don't know.
You
I was
don't-
not there that night.
You don't know why this happened?
I was not there that night.
Well, we know better than that, Jerry. You know better than that. You know I'm not lying. Okay.
I don't know.
You
I
do
don't know
know,
what-
Jerry.
I don't know what games play.
You know for a fact I'm not lying about that. Okay? You know for a fact that I'm not lying about that. Okay, that's the one thing we all know.
We don't know that.
We do.
Well, I don't assume you're lying.
You don't assume
You
I am?
believe you believe what you believe.
Well, I appreciate you giving me that. What I don't believe is that you don't remember being there that night. And I'm starting to feel like your reluctance to explain why you were there.
If I was there, I don't know. As far as I know, I was not there.
If you were there, you don't know what you were doing there?
I don't know. I don't have a recollection of being there.
Okay. Well, is it possible you were there shopping by yourself and someone wrote your plate down for some other reason?
I don't
I
believe.
mean, I know that's something you previously said no, but If you really thought hard about that.
What was the plate number?
What's that?
What plate number do you have?
Oh, I don't even have any of my paperwork with me. I just brought that picture to show you.
I don't believe it. If there was a plate number, why would it take that many years?
Take a good look at her picture for me,
Mhm.
please. And just really make sure in your mind that this is not someone you know
I don't believe
or that
so.
you met. This is not a girl you ran into at a bar that
No.
night.
No.
It's not someone that
I don't go to bars, really.
did you ever talk to? Well, okay, I'll give you that. I don't go to bars that much myself, but you know, I can envision someone coming down from Manchester, from Manchester, and just stopping out at the new mall, checking it out. You know, maybe there was a bar in the mall. Maybe going to the bar in the mall. Maybe running into girls that work there. And I'm not judging you if you're trying to, you know, talk to girls or whatever at that time in your life. You were young. Although you claim this picture made you good looking, I think you probably were back in the day.
Not like
Okay.
that, but
What's that?
not like that.
Not like that? Well,
Can I make this call quick?
sure can.
It's my brother.
Oh, okay.
Good. Oh, okay.
Would you like us to step out?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I don't see anything. Oh, okay. 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 All right, appreciate it. Bye. Were you guys sitting on the gravel road watching me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's what that was about.
Oh.
Take the exhibit back out here. Can I put you with a Sharon? You may. This is what's been previously marked and introduced as State's Exhibit 2C, photograph of Michelle Martinko. Is that a similar photograph? I think you may have had a black and white that day, to the photograph you showed Mr. Burns on December 19, 2018.
Yes.
So there's not any confusion here. Do you have a plate number for Mr. Burns?
No.
What was that about?
That was a bluff. I was hoping he would assume that someone had seen him there and be more forthcoming with me.
During the interview with Mr. Burns that we just saw here in court, do you recall asking Mr. Burns directly, did you murder someone that night?
Yes.
What was his response?
I don't remember it was test it. That's his response. Test it.
During your interaction with Mr. Burns, did you see some noticeable scars to his hands or to his arms?
Yeah, he had He had a bunch of scars on his hands and arms.
Were they on both hands and both arms?
Yes.
Was there quite a few of them?
Yeah, there was quite a few.
Shift gears just a little bit here, Matt, and take you to March of 2019. Did you coordinate with DCI lab criminalist Mike Schmidt in Bodie Laboratories in Lorton, Virginia, to send Bodie DCI lab exhibit I, the blood scrapings from the gear shift selector?
Yes, I did.
And as we heard yesterday, was that done? Was it sent then?
Yes, it was.
On or about June 3rd, 2019, did you then receive a request from Bodie to send more evidence to be used as comparison to the blood shift, the gear shift selector with the blood?
Yes.
And what did you prepare and send to Bodie on or about June 3rd of 2019?
They asked for one of Jerry Burns' known buccal swabs to compare to the profile that they had developed from the blood scrapings from the gear shift.
So was it your understanding they had developed a profile, but they needed the swabs for comparison?
Yes.
May I approach witness, Your Honor? Hey, the witness, what's...
Excuse me.
Oh, sure. Hey, the witness, what's been marked as 17T for identification purposes, and do you see this investigator in there?
I do.
Okay, what is this exhibit?
It's just a FedEx receipt from when I sent the buccal swabs to Bodie in June of 2019.
Does that show that you, as you just testified to, that you packaged and prepared and then sent Jerry Burns known buccal swabs that had been at the Cedar Rapids Police Department after being returned from the DCI lab to Bodie Laboratories on June 4th, or on June 3rd, but the delivery date confirmed in June 4th?
Correct. They asked that we send it overnight.
And the second page here, can you tell us what that is?
This is just the sticker that FedEx put on there for me, and it just shows that it was sent to Bodie, and then shows that I was the sending party.
And there's some highlights on that document there?
Yeah, it just shows the arrival time of June 4th at 10:30 a.m., priority overnight mail.
Are those highlights that you put on that document?
Yes.
And does that just further show that those known buccal swabs were sent to Bodie?
Correct.
Move to amend state 17T.
Any objection to
No objection.
17B will be received and made further.
At this time, we have no further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, thank you. Investigator Denlinger, before you and retired DCI agent J.D. Smith went to Manchester, Iowa on December 19, 2018, you'd already done quite a bit of background checking on Mr. Burns, hadn't you?
Yes.
You knew on the date that you went to see Mr. Burns that he was living in Manchester, of course,
Yes.
and that he had, back in the 1970s, worked at a business called Wallace's.
Yes.
And Wallace's is what kind of a business?
It's an agricultural business. They sell products for farmers that have livestock. It's my understanding.
Well, Wallace's was an implement dealer, wasn't it? And an equipment dealer?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a different thing. Yes, you're right. Wallace is an implement dealer.
And Wallace's was a business in Manchester, Iowa?
I believe so.
And then you also learned in your background investigation that Mr. Burns had worked at a firm called Walnut Grove,
Correct.
and Walnut Grove sold what?
I believe Walnut Grove's the company that sold the products for farmers that raise livestock.
And Mr. Burns had worked there.
I believe so, yes.
By the way, Investigator Denlinger, what is the distance between Manchester, Iowa, and Westdale Mall?
I don't know the distance.
Well, did you investigate that as part of your work in this case?
Probably. Even today, I'd want to pull it up on my phone if you're asking me to give you a distance. It's about 45 minutes drive.
Close to an hour, though, to drive from Manchester to Westdale Mall?
Maybe.
Well, do you know?
I usually drive from downtown Cedar Rapids, so yeah, if you want to add 15 minutes, I would say an hour is probably a good approximate.
Okay. As a matter of fact, as part of your investigation, you also went to the Delaware County Treasurer's Office to see what kind of vehicles, cars, trucks Mr. Burns had registered back in the 1979 era?
Yes, I did.
And did he in fact have vehicles registered in Delaware County?
Yes.
What kind of car or truck?
I didn't review the paperwork prior to coming today, so I don't recall.
But in any event, you looked into that before you met with Mr. Burns in December of 2018?
Yes.
Okay. You knew, of course, that he had been married,
Yes.
and the reason you knew about where he worked is because you looked at his engagement announcement in the paper.
Yes.
And also you learned that he worked at Walnut Grove because there was a story in the paper back then in Manchester.
Yes.
Did you know that he had young children in 1979?
Yes.
Did you know that before you met with him in December?
Yes.
And how old were his children in December of 1979?
You put me on the spot. He had two at that time. One was young, born in, I think, early 79. One had been born 75, 76. So probably, 3, 4, and then less than 1.
Okay. Now, the investigation that you did into Mr. Burns's background, as we have, I think, discovered during the course of the last week and a half, was put into a report.
Correct.
And like all Cedar Rapids police officers and investigators in particular, when you run something down, interview someone, you put it in a report.
Yeah, for the most part.
Nope. Well, in this particular case, you made fastidious reports about who you interviewed and what you did in your investigation, didn't you?
I tried to, yes.
And the information that you learned about Mr. Burns's background, his employment, his marriage, his children, his car registration, all showed up in reports.
Yes.
And as part of the rules of criminal procedure and the dictates of the United States Constitution, the reports that you prepared are roughly described as discovery.
Yes.
And those discovery materials, as required by the rules and as required by the Constitution, are furnished to the defense, aren't they?
Yes.
Sorry.
Sorry.
We need to ask him for legal opinions on the scope of companies qualified to answer those. And also, I'm not sure the relevancy of
Response, Mr. Speaker.
Its relevance is going to be made plainly evident in the next witness who's appearing for the state.
The objection at this point will be overruled. You can ask your next question.
Could I hear the court's ruling again, please?
Oh, the objection will be overruled.
Thank you.
Ask your next question.
Thanks. So, do you handle any federal criminal cases?
Not in a long time.
Okay. Are you familiar with the discovery rules in federal court?
No, I'm not familiar with the discovery rules in federal court.
Okay. But in state court, in state criminal cases, the defendant and the defense lawyer are entitled to have the discovery materials.
Okay, yes,
And a person in jail is allowed to review their own discovery.
yes.
In the course of your investigation, and I think that you referred to it earlier in your testimony today about the number of people who had been eliminated based on the comparison of those persons' DNA to the male profile in F5, this found in Exhibit 8, correct?
Correct.
And in the course of your investigation and becoming familiar with the groundwork that had been laid by your predecessors, you learned that there were a lot of potential suspects whose identity, investigation, DNA was all explored by investigators like you and your predecessors.
Correct.
And you learned in your preparation for your work in this case that there were a number of people who had actually confessed to killing Michelle Martinko.
Correct.
And among the people who had confessed were an inmate in the Anamosa State Penitentiary, right?
Correct.
By the name of Billy Byrne or William Byrne.
Correct.
And then there were other people who had confessed to their spouses or parents having killed Michelle Martinko.
Correct.
And you actually compiled a list of the people who had confessed or admitted to killing her, didn't you?
I don't remember compiling a list myself.
Had you seen such a list in the investigative file?
I don't know if there's a specific list just dedicated to people that have confessed over the years.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm handing you what is page 100 out of a 535-page file. This is an excerpt from the investigative files.
Do you have the first page of this?
That's as much of 535 pages as I brought, but that's the one page. Would this have been a page that you would have reviewed in the course of your preparation for your work in the case?
Is this part of it?
Yes.
So this report was prepared by Doug Larison.
Right, and you would have reviewed that report in the course of your preparations and your work in the case?
Yes.
So in any event, there were a number of people identified, such as William Byrne, who had allegedly confessed to the killing.
Correct. That document is not a list of people that have confessed. That's a list of suspects they've compiled, which includes people like that, but it's not specifically just people that have confessed.
But a number of people in this list had confessed either to other inmates or to parents or to spouses about the killing.
Right, and we take that seriously, so we looked into those.
And these materials were part of the investigative report that were turned over to us.
Correct, yes.
In your review of the investigation that had preceded you, were you able to determine whether the identity of the man who had frightened Michelle Martinko 4 days before her death had ever been located?
Give me a little more background on that one.
Sure. I believe Mr. Seidel testified that in 1981 he had told an interviewer with the Cedar Rapids Police Department that 4 days before she died, she told him that she had been frightened by an ugly or a grotesque man, and she was worried about that. You remember that testimony?
Right, yes, I do.
And do you know if that person was ever located or identified in any way?
No, there was no name, and no one had anything to specific to follow up on that.
Do you know if any of Ms. Martinko's friends were asked about that worry?
I don't know specifically. Yeah, I don't know without reviewing all those reports again to see if they were specifically asked about that.
In questioning Mr. Burns on December 19, 2018, And this, of course, occurred at his office in Manchester, Iowa.
Yes.
And what kind of work does Mr. Burns do at that business?
Powder coating.
And could you tell the men and women of the jury what powder coating is?
Well, he could probably describe it better than I could, but it's painting. It's some sort of a painting where they sandblast metal and then put a more durable paint finish on it.
And did you, aside from going into the office, go into the work area of the business?
No.
Did you see also in the picture shown in the video that we just watched, number 14A, did you see hanging on the wall some belts?
Oh, yes, yes.
And what are those belts?
I don't know what the belts were for.
Well, they also sold Hustler mowers there at the shop, didn't they?
Yes.
And would those be drive belts for the blades that run the mowers?
I don't know.
Well, you were asked about scars on Mr. Burns's hands. Did he explain those scars to you?
He said he had lots of scars and he didn't know where they all came from.
In fact, he told you about an accident he had there at the business, didn't he, where his hand got smashed or cut by some equipment?
Yes, he did.
Did you also know before you interviewed him in December of 2018 that he had farmed?
No.
You didn't know that he farmed?
No, I don't think I knew that he was a farmer.
You noticed him blinking a lot?
I did?
Did he tell you that he had glaucoma
Yes.
and he used medicine in his eyes?
I assume that. I don't recall if he said that specifically.
Well, you told us that he didn't exhibit any reaction at all. Do you know what his normal reaction is?
No.
But he did tell you that he had never lived in Cedar Rapids, right?
Correct.
And he was a salesman out of Elkader.
Correct.
And can you tell the men and women of the jury where Elkader is?
Not without a map. I know it's up near Manchester somewhere, but I don't want to. I don't want to tell them where it's at without looking at a map.
Well, how long does it take to drive from Elkader to the Westdale Mall?
Same answer. I don't want to. I don't want to guess. I've actually never been to Elkader.
I beg your pardon?
I've never been to Elkader.
You didn't go to Elkader to try to investigate Mr. Burns's background in employment at Walnut Grove?
Correct. I couldn't find any records that Walnut Grove still exists.
So Mr. Burns told you that he had gone to the Westdale Mall, and I think, as I heard the audio, that he said that he had gone there with his family,
Correct.
Christmas shopping,
Correct.
had been to Penny's,
Correct.
and of course he was, as you have told us, he was married in 1979.
Correct.
And he actually said he'd gone Christmas shopping there over the years.
Correct.
He said that it was not possible that his DNA would have been there at the scene because he wasn't there.
Correct.
And he said that he didn't think anything happened that night,
Correct.
that there wasn't any possibility that his DNA would be there,
Correct.
traced to the crime.
Correct.
He didn't understand where this information came that he was potentially involved, where that would have come from.
Correct.
He didn't believe it, that testing would connect it to him.
Correct.
And he said repeatedly, "I was not there that night."
Correct.
And if he was there, he didn't have any recollection of it.
Correct. No recollection of being there.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have for you.
Redirect Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. First, along the lines of those last few questions Mr. Spies asked you, now, with regard to what Mr. Burns said, you were asked, he said he didn't believe his DNA was there. Is that right?
Correct, that's exactly what he said.
And he said he had no recollection if he was there, right?
Correct, he said, I have no recollection if I was there.
So when you were asked what he said, were you reporting your belief in what he said or just what he said?
No, I thought it was all a lie.
Well, I mean, basically from what you were saying, then you were just reporting what he said, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Did he indicate to you specifically at any point in time that on December 19th, 1979, he was Christmas shopping at Westdale Mall?
No,
As indicated by the questions you were asked by Mr. Spies, did you and other investigators conduct what you could as far as a comprehensive check of Mr. Burns' background?
we did.
And would that pertain then to kind of what's referred to sometimes as some intelligence, just to figure out what was going on in his life back then?
Yes,
And through that, were you able to develop any kind of connection between he and Michelle Martinko?
none.
And I know you're not an eye doctor or anything like that, but you did notice the blinking that took place during the interview?
I did.
And did that observation change at any point in time during the interview, or
No,
come, okay. We heard testimony from Andy Seidel earlier in this case that he reported that Michelle stated to him she was frightened by this man, and from what Andy said, she didn't seem that bothered by it. Was there any more information available based on your review of the investigative file in 1979 to follow up on that?
no, there's nothing more that I could do to follow up on that.
As far as you could tell, was that a singular incident reported by Ms. Martinko that there was no other information to follow up on?
That's what it looked like.
Do you know, or have you heard of Billy Byrne?
I have.
And who is he?
He's just, he's an individual that's been arrested in Cedar Rapids for a number of years for a lot of things.
Does he have a violent history?
He does.
You were asked about Mr. Byrne and an indication that he may have confessed to killing Michelle Martinko. Is that something Mr. Byrne told you or anybody else?
No, he didn't tell me.
Any of these individuals who allegedly confessed to this, did anybody confess to a police officer about this?
Not to my knowledge, no.
To your knowledge, were these reports then second, sometimes third-hand reports?
Yes,
You and other investigators wanted to solve this, didn't you?
I did.
So if somebody confessed to the killing of Michelle Martinko and you could prove it, would you have made an arrest?
Definitely.
Now, Mr. Byrne, let's go back to him specifically. Did he make this confession allegedly in a jail cell
That's my understanding.
or in prison?
Yeah, correct.
So, based upon your experience, have you encountered situations where individuals are trying to impress other people around them and would say something like that as an intimidation factor? Does that?
Yes, exactly. I've heard that multiple times.
And to the extent you were able to do it, did you eliminate any individual who purportedly confessed to killing Michelle Martinko through your investigation in/or DNA comparison?
Correct.
May I approach the exhibit, Your Honor? Indeed, with respect to Exhibit A, do you see the name William James Byrne on that?
He is about 3 spots below Jerry Burns. And it's spelled differently, the B-Y, R-N-E, and he was eliminated through a CODIS as a,
Okay, is that the system that eliminates upwards of like 14 million different individuals, criminal records and whatnot?
absolutely, yep.
Being assured to know that there's no rush to judgment even when there's these alleged confessions. With regard to that list that was shown to you by Mr. Spies, again, does that contain a list of multiple people who allegedly confessed to this, or just a handful or so, just a few?
It's just a handful or so.
That's all we have, Your Honor.
Additional cross-examination, Mr. Spies.
Yes, thank you. Well, Investigator Denlinger, you knew from the interviews that were conducted of Ms. Martinko's friends that when she was working at the Westdale Mall, that she was concerned about somebody stalking her in the mall, weren't you?
Yeah, I don't remember the specifics of that. I do remember there being talk of people at the mall, weird men at the mall and stuff like that. Having worked at the mall myself, I'm familiar with, people talking like that.
Well, irrespective of your experience, many, many years later, I'm sure,
Yes,
you knew that her friends were aware that she was concerned about somebody looking in, stalking, looking through the windows of the store that she worked at.
yes.
And as far as Mr. Byrne or anybody else who allegedly confessed and was, by your tally on 8A, eliminated, their DNA was compared to F5, right?
Yes,
No other DNA that was present in the car.
correct, F5.
Thank you, that's all.
Additional information for this witness.
Yes, Your Honor, and briefly here, we're going to test your knowledge of the file, Matt.
Okay.
At the time that Michelle was working she working at Lindale Mall at the time?
Yes.
Okay, where's Lindale Mall?
Lindale Mall is on the opposite side of Cedar Rapids from Westdale.
In this report that this individual was looking at her and grossed her out or whatever it may be, is it your understanding that report was made while she was working at Lindale Mall?
Yes, it was.
And several days, if not weeks, or a week before this occurred?
Correct.
That's all, Your Honor.
Anything further, Mr. Spies?
Nothing further necessary, thank you.
Okay, thank you. You may step down, Investigator Denlinger. The record will show that parties in council, as well as members of the jury, have returned to the courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I've informed you a couple of different times that we aren't ever certain how things are going to proceed and how quickly or how slowly certain evidence will come in. We're actually running a bit ahead of schedule. And I commented last night on the amazing timing of these attorneys that we would get to the conclusion of a witness when it was appropriate for us to break. We do have a bit of a break right now, and the attorneys and I have some items that we need to take up outside your presence. So we will recess at this point until 1:30 this afternoon. You're free to go about your business and come back at 1:30. And please, as always, bear in mind that admonition to keep an open mind. You haven't heard all of the evidence in the case. It would be contrary to your oath to make up your mind at this point or to discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. You can only do that when you meet as a group to deliberate after all of the evidence has been submitted to you. But we will stand in recess until 1:30. Thank you, ladies and